Hello YouTube, Reddit, and whoever else sees this. You all saw the title. Today, in light of recent events, Reddit posts, etc., I'm going to be talking about toxicity. Hopefully this video covers all scumbags and whiners. In the background are just some toxic, or it's more mild, twin salty invasions, or at least around the theme of toxicity. So, hosts, phantoms, blues, reds, purples, and whoever else, here are my thoughts on toxicity. Oh, and obviously this is my opinion, feel free to disagree civilly in the comments below, disclaimer. Anyway, moving on. Chapter 1, on twinks. Firstly, I just want to clarify what I mean when I talk about twinks. To some, twinks are just anyone who's good playing at lower levels. These people seem to think that twinks are not playing at a level proportional to their skill level. However, in my opinion, since what skill level being based on what soul level is a subjective thing, when fights between reds, hosts, etc. are based on cunning and skill, I personally define twink as anyone who's using a higher level gear in Estus in order to gain an edge over hosts and their phantoms. Many newer players have been complaining about this rampant twinking problem at the very low levels, where a person could have literally been picking up the game for the first time. In response, many people have said 2 points. Firstly, that they are simply trying to balance the host's advantage, as well as being able to stand a chance against overlevel phantoms and ganks. I personally think that if you're good enough to go through so much of the late game at a low soul and weapon upgrade level, you probably don't need the edge, unless you hacked it, but that's not the point right now. The second point was just, get good. I know that DS3 isn't the most beginner-friendly game, but in my opinion, twinks seem to be taking that difficulty slope and bringing it up to 11. Now I understand that having twinks fight you when you summon at lower soul levels can get you off the habit, and as some people would think of it, help people have a more fun Dark Souls experience. I also think that twinks can stop your MLG super high level friend from basically escorting you, being the fun vampires, as Saint Wright would call them. So I think both sides kinda have a point. However, I've never been twinked before, so how could I say anything? Don't knock it till you tried it, right? So I made the most meta twink you can make, Prisoner's Chain, Dragon Slayer Axe, etc, etc. And I'll have to admit, I was riding a high for a few invasions, like a power fantasy. But then, as that high started to fade, I just noticed the hosts. They were fat rolling, turtling, R1 spamming. They were definitely very new. And here I was, a far more experienced player, pounding the crap out of them, when they had probably less than 10 hours in the game. So what did I do? I didn't want to put the players off the game, but I also wanted them to get good and not be able to just cheese their way through Dark Souls. So I decided I'll let the game make them get good, the way it was meant to be. I started by killing the phantoms, any phantoms, over-leveled or otherwise. Then I just gave some gifts to the host and showed him that I'm not going to hurt him. But if he resummons, I'll take out the phantom. The cycle essentially forces the host to try the level themselves. My point is, twinking is just a mechanic. There's no inherent goodness or malice inbuilt in twinking, or any mechanic, for that case. Saint Wright actually made a very good video about it. It's called Twinks, Griefers, and something else. But anyway, there are good twinks and bad twinks. When you encounter a bad twink next time, I urge you, don't think that twinks suck, just think that guy sucked. However, if you really don't want to encounter twinks, I suggest you play on Ember, just until the Catacombs or Airville or so. After these areas, twinks aren't really as potent as before, because their advantage has been reduced. So, moving on. Chapter 2, on ganks and gonks. Okay, so, again, I first want to explain what I'm talking about. Ganks are when a group of players, the host and 2 to 3 phantoms, who clear out a level and stay there solely to kill invaders. Gonk, on the other hand, are when the host summons 2 or 3 phantoms to help him through a level. Gonks are obviously easier to deal with than ganks, and most people don't have too much of a problem with gonks, but many invaders hate ganks. Invaders' main argument is that, on top of all the advantages the gankers have over the invader, they also removed one of the invader's only advantage, the mobs, or the level. And the point is, the balance is skewed. However, in most ganks, due to the dried finger, you could re-invade over and over. This means that ganks function somewhat as a raid in my opinion, we're joining forces with other invaders and trying to take this like boss fight type thing down. And when you finally defeat the gang, it feels awesome. So what if you die? That's Dark Souls. It's like fighting a boss. You keep throwing yourself at them until you beat them. The point is there's a goal in mind which you can accomplish. It's not impossible. This doesn't mean that everyone should gank or gonk, because then the special raid-like nature of the gank is gone and you're just running into huge amounts of people every single time and getting wrecked. Anyway, moving on to a few slightly smaller topics. The meta. Another thing many people get angry about are players who stick rigidly to the meta. The meta is the most effective tactic available. These are like Dark, Lothric Sword, Turtles, etc. And most people say it's unfair that these builds are boring, but viable, and people tend to say that you can't play anything else and you're stuck in this meta cycle. Okay, for this I want to talk about something I call the meta cycle. I don't know the real name. Basically, some players will adopt a meta strategy, but eventually other players will find a tactic or build which hard counters this meta. This essentially becomes a new meta because you're beating everyone who's using the old meta. And then we find a hard counter to this, and so on and so forth. And this cycle keeps the game, makes the game last longer and keeps things interesting. It also means that if you aren't following the meta, you don't have to worry that much about being hard countered. Also, dying to a meta player isn't that big of a deal. Just try to find a counter to their playstyle. Meta doesn't mean invincible. Now, finally, Chapter 4, General Toxicity. Point downs, welcome, and applause. Hate mail, and disconnects. These things can be present in pretty much any PvP encounter. However, I've noticed, if you don't do it to them, they might not do it to you. There's a higher chance that they won't do it to them. If they point down, just kill them and be nice, a bow or joy. If they send hate mail, don't fight with people like that. You can't win, but you can help by ignoring them. If they disconnect, we'll just move on. Anyway, to conclude, toxicity is a big part of the Dark Souls community, from elitists to hackers to haters. While we can't stop it, we can try to avoid being toxic ourselves and encourage a more accepting and fun community. We don't want to be like League of Legends, do we? I'm not saying that you have to be like a saint. You can get angry and frustrated, but remember, if you're constantly coming into this game and getting angry and frustrated every time you die, well then that's not Dark Souls. You're not supposed to get angry when you die in Dark Souls. You're supposed to try to learn from it. What did you do wrong? Or what went wrong? Just because you died to another player doesn't make them better than you. You might have just had bad luck. It's not that big of a deal. It's just a game, bro. But you're probably burnt out. Just chill, take a break, and maybe return a slightly less salty individual, and hopefully we can try to make this game a slightly better community. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. That was my opinion on toxicity in Dark Souls. See you next time.